Good day. My name is Bea Nicolian, and I am the team manager for the Wokingham Prevention and Youth Justice Service. Today I'm going to deliver a presentation on knife crime and county lines, and this is intended for parents and carers of our children. And we're hoping to provide you with some tools so that you can initiate and have conversations with your children about these two very important topics. And hopefully you will find some answers for when you're having those conversations. We're going to talk a little bit about knife crime and what counts as knife crime and what is county lines. We're going to give some legal information, including what counts as a weapon, and tell you about the risk factors and signs of concerns, and finally some ideas about how you can support your child if you have any concerns. Knife crime is often referred to any offending that involves knives and sharp instruments. Usually they would be referred as possession of a knife, although knives can also be used within a more serious crime like a knife point robbery. Weapon crime is often referred to anything that includes knives but also other weapons. Weapons are any items that are made, adapted or intended to cause harm. County line is usually referred to when children are used to sell drugs in coastal or market towns outside from their normal area of residence. It is called like this because line is the phone used by the criminals to sell drugs, and county because usually these crimes are city criminals going into the countryside, and the jargon is said, in jargon they say going county. Often there's this connection between county lines and knife crime because children that are being exploited to commit county lines carry knives to protect themselves. So a quick guide around knife and weapon offences, and with this information we want to provide you with some tools so that you can explain some of these differences to your children. So when we're talking about knife crime, we're talking about an offence of carrying or threatening with any knife, lock knife, multi-tool knives, and it includes butterfly, flick, zombie, and any type of knives. Offensive weapons are items carried with the intention to cause injury, and those items could be items manufactured for the sole purpose of causing harm, like swords, machetes, knuckle dusters, kitchen knife, 3-inch bladed knife. So here we have a very important distinction because savvy children will tell you if you carry a blade that's under 3 inches, you are allowed to carry that and it's not an offense. And whilst that might not count as a bladed or sharply pointed article, it may count as carrying an offensive weapon if it's used in the context of trying to cause harm to someone else. For instance, if you are arrested holding a knife that is under 3 inches blade within a fight and you're using that to threaten someone. So you may not be charged with carrying a bladed article, but you may be charged with carrying an offensive weapon. An offensive weapon is also an item that was not initially manufactured to cause harm, but has been adapted for the purpose of causing harm. This could be, for instance, a sharpened comb, or if you carry a snooker ball inside a sock. Unintended offensive weapons are items that were not again manufactured to cause harm, but they are carried with the intention of actually causing harm to others. And that could be a pair of scissors, an umbrella, or a baseball bat. So say, for instance, you are arrested with a baseball bat in the middle of a fight, and then that could be construed as you having an offensive weapon, particularly if, say, for instance, that you cannot prove that you regularly play baseball or that you were on your way to a baseball match. We are not allowed to have any blade or offensive weapon, the ones that we have just mentioned, in public places, and those public places include schools, colleges, parks or gigs. And within our homes, there are certain items that if we have them, or if our children have them, they could be charged with possession of an offensive weapon, even if it's within the home. This is a relatively new piece of legislation, and it includes having at home certain weapons such as knuckle dusters, flick knives, throwing stars, zombie knives, telescopic truncheons, and push daggers. And you have to be really mindful because some of these articles are being purchased off the internet, and so your children might be receiving them in the post. The children will always know which are the exceptions to the law, so it's really important that you are aware of this, because children will always try to push that boundary and say, what if? So what if I am a chef, for instance? Yes, if you're a chef, you obviously will be allowed to carry knives, but that is not to say that you can carry them in any way and, for instance, be excused if you have a sharpened knife in your back pocket. In fact, your knives will have to be carried in a protective manner so that they are locked and they are not easily accessible. Usually, for instance, if you're traveling by car, it would not be enough to have them in the passenger seat. You would be expected to have them again locked and perhaps in the boot of the car. For religious reasons, again, you may be carrying a weapon or an item that might be considered a weapon. But it's not as if you are carrying a kirpan and then you can claim to be a Sikh if you actually cannot prove that you are one. If you are working in a film set or in a theatre show, again, you may be carrying some items that might otherwise be considered an offensive weapon, but they have to be carried in such a way that they do not present a danger to others. And again, I want to reiterate the issue about the blade under 3 inches, because children are very quick to say, if my blade is under 3 inches, I'm fine. And yes, technically you are fine, but it depends on the context in which you are arrested with that blade, because if you're using it to threaten others or in the middle of a fight, then that might not be a bladed article, but it might become an offensive weapon. It is not a defense in law to say that you carry a knife for your own safety, because you found it behind a bush, because you were told to hold it for someone else, because you were planning to hand it over to the police station, or because you wanted to prevent others from getting hurt if they found it. These are not things I have made up. These are all reasons that children have throughout the years given us and continue to give us about why they carry knives. And so it's important that we educate our children to say, if you find something behind a bush, you have to go and speak with an adult. You don't pick up that item and carry it to school or to the police station. You just alert an adult about it. The reasons why children carry knives are various, but I would like to highlight some of the most regular ones that we find through our assessments. This could be because they have a specific or perceived fear of being a victim themselves. This could be because they have been threatened or because a very close friend may have been threatened or actually harmed. A general self-defense thing about just in case, and this could be if there's any particular context at some point in time within their area or community, because they don't know it's wrong or illegal. And that's why we want to educate parents and to provide parents with tools to be able, for you to be able to have these conversations with your children. They sometimes carry knives to intimidate others as a way of protecting themselves. They wrongly think that if they have a knife, others will not come and assault them or threaten them or cause harm to them. They may carry knives because they are involved in crime, or because they want to earn street credentials or respect from their peers, or because there's peer pressure into carrying knives. We want to provide you with some facts about knife crime. In Wokingham, 12% of our caseload at the moment is about children involved with knives. So we want to put knife crime in perspective within our local community. The national picture, the most recent statistics provided by the Ministry of Justice indicate that in the year to March 2021, there has been a 21% decrease in the number of knife crime and weapon offences compared to the previous year. Yes, this could be and is likely to have been impacted by the lockdown restrictions from COVID-19, but also in the year to March 2020, there had already been noted a decrease in the number of knife crime offences. Statistically, children who carry a knife are 3 times more likely to be stabbed with their own weapon or actually by someone else's, because children think that they are protecting themselves, but they are actually putting themselves at risk by carrying a knife. We want to make you aware as well of the second strike rule, which means that a child that is convicted for the second time for an offence of carrying a knife or a weapon related offence will have to receive a mandatory prison sentence of a minimum of 4 months. And also with carrying a knife, a child is more likely to be involved in a more serious crime like grievous bodily harm, manslaughter or murder, even if your child has not been the one that has directly murdered or attempted to murder someone. And this is because of the joint enterprise. Children are in a group, someone in the group has a knife, someone in that group harms someone with that knife. Your child may be subject to the same law or be convicted for the same reasons as the person who was actually carrying the knife and committing the offense themselves. We have here some links to explain a little bit about joint enterprise and knife crime, and that the second clip explains school conflict and negative friends and how those can be all intertwined and linked with knife crime. The links are here in the presentation, so I will let you to watch this clip on your own. Now moving to county lines. County lines is a term that refers mainly to urban gangs who supply illegal drugs to county, market or coastal towns. So the market or coastal towns are the ones that are referred as county towns, and the line is the phone to which the clients call to purchase drugs. So often these are, as I've said, urban gangs from main urban spots like London or Leeds or Manchester or Birmingham, who send children to the coastal or market towns nearby. In this context, Wokingham is mainly an importer of county lines, which means that criminals come to Wokingham from other areas and to sell in our town, rather than Wokingham being an exporter of county lines, which means our children being the ones that are sent outside of Wokingham to sell drugs. However, what we have recently been identifying are some local lines which replicate the model of county lines, and they could be operating in the area. So probably this would look like someone from one part of Wokingham being sent to another part of Wokingham where they may be less known, and their faces may be less recognized by the local police officers so that they can sell drugs. According to the National Crime Agency, police forces tackling county lines have found that 85% of people involved in county lines carried knives. And this is where we see that link between county lines and knife crime. Children are sent to areas where they don't know, they are not familiar with, they are traveling on their own, they are carrying a lot of money in drugs, and probably they will have to handle some cash themselves. If they lose those drugs, they incur in significant debts, and that's why some children may or are likely, very likely, if involved in county lines, to be carrying knives. Often vulnerable children are groomed into county lines and then coerced to remain involved in this type of activity. They will witness or become involved in violence, exploitation, abuse, and crime. So, as you can see, there's a lot of connection between child criminal exploitation, county lines, and knife crime. So children get into county lines because they are being exploited, and because of their activities within county lines, they are often going to be carrying knives. Gangs and criminals use social media to reach and recruit vulnerable children. They portray an aspirational and glamorous lifestyle, and they offer children that are struggling usually with self-esteem or with relationships at home or with relationship with their peers. They offer these vulnerable children a sense of belonging. Sometimes they are also, as I'm saying, they portray this aspirational and glamorous lifestyle, and children that want to replicate that lifestyle, they are offered jobs and then they get dragged into this criminal activity. What are the signs of alarm that you have to be mindful of? A sudden change in friendship group. You often know all your child's friendship, but suddenly they start going out or they start mentioning names that you don't recognize. If your child has more than one mobile phone, particularly if the second phone is not a smartphone, but not necessarily. Your child should not have a need to have two phones. Usually that second phone is not going to be a phone that you have provided them with. Missing episodes, particularly if your child is found out of area. If your child is found in Brighton, in Weston-super-Mare, in Norwich, and if your child has no reason to be in that area, you have no family in that area, your child has no friend in that area, that should be a very, very significant alarm bell. If there is a drop in grades or an increase in school exclusions, or if your child is late and skipping school and you are not aware of, when the school calls and says, "Where's your child?" and you were absolutely sure that your child had left that morning to school, if your child drops grades drop, if your child starts getting a regular fixed term exclusion, sometimes they may be purposely putting them in a position where they are excluded by the school so that they can get away and continue to work in county lines. If your child gets involved in low-level criminality or substance misuse, that could be a getaway for more serious criminal behavior. And if you notice an increased violence at home, this could be your child's way of trying to tell you that something's not wrong, and they may not be able to articulate that in any other way than by becoming more violent with you at home. What are the risk factors, the things or the context that get your child make your child more vulnerable to be captured or exploited by others? If your child has been, or a friend, a close friend, has been victim of serious youth violence, professional experience continuously shows us that a victim of serious youth violence could become a perpetrator of serious youth violence. If your child has been assaulted, if your child has been stabbed, robbed, your child's more likely to then become a perpetrator of those behaviors themselves. A relationship breakdown, that could be a personal relationship of your child or breakdown in the relationship with parents or caregivers. Low self-esteem, or a child that's been a victim of bullying. The transition into secondary school. This is one of the most vulnerable periods for your child, particularly because it also involves when we start giving our children a little bit more of freedom. So there's that change of context, of friendships, of everything that's known to your child. They move into the unknown of the secondary school. They also get a little bit more freedom, and that could, for some children, become a very vulnerable period. A major family stressor, and that could be a bereavement, the loss of employment, or a very significant health issue or illness in the family, or when parents are not physically and emotionally available for the child. If you identify a risk factor and you see a sign of alarm, then stop and think whether your child could be at risk of becoming involved with either knife crime or with county lines. How can you support your child if you've identified a risk factor or you've seen some signs of alarm? These are some of the things that we suggest. Firstly, don't judge. Don't judge your child and don't judge yourself. Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to my child? That's not going to help. Listen. Listen, because your child may be trying to talk to you in many different ways. Use open questions rather than just why. Use open questions when you talk to your child. So that will allow your child to expand a little bit more on how they're feeling, what they're thinking, what's going on for them. Don't beat yourself up. This can happen to anyone. There's no distinction of race, ethnicity, social class, or gender. Anyone can be at risk of their children being exploited or the children becoming involved in offending behavior. Don't give up. If you're trying to talk to your child and your child is not responsive the first or the second time, keep trying. If your child's involved in county lines or is being exploited, criminally or sexually exploited, your child's gonna build up defenses. They know that something's wrong. They just don't know how to articulate what's wrong or what's going on for them. So you will need a lot of patience to be able to get through to your child. Ask yourself whether you are colluding. By this I mean that if you know that your child, for instance, if your child is missing from school or has missed school, are you colluding with them, kind of justifying or accepting their explanations without being a little bit more curious about what's going on? Be patient for the same reason that we're saying don't give up. Be patient because it may take some time for your child to open up. Reassure them that you're going to be there no matter what. Reassure them that you're not judging them, and reassure them that you're going to be there when they are ready to talk to you. Educate yourself and your child by understanding what are the risk factors, what are the signs of alarm, what are the legislation. Then you will be able to also educate your child. And don't be afraid of starting and having those discussions with your children at home. And if you feel alone, if you feel clueless, just ask for help, because there are many agencies and many practitioners in Wokingham that would be able to help you. A good starting point is always the school, with which you would have perhaps the closest relationship, but you can also call our service for advice, or the Wokingham front door if you would like to refer your child for, or yourself for support. This is a very, very interesting clip that is going to raise awareness, hopefully, about how things may be going on in front of our noses and we just don't see them happening. So this is a clip that is going to prompt you to be curious about what's going on for your child, and I highly recommend that you watch it. Finally, a little bit more about who we are. Within the Wokingham Borough Council, you have children's services, and children's services include social care, early help for children and parents, and my service, which is the Prevention and Youth Justice Service, and we specifically work with children who offend or are at risk of offending. The pathways into our service are the prevention and the statutory pathway. Prevention is when we get referrals from either school, the police, the parents, social care, early help, or diversion. I'm going to explain a little bit what that means, about children who are at risk of offending. So say, for instance, the school has concerns because they know that a child has come into the school with a knife. They issue a fixed term exclusion, but they obviously want to prevent that behavior from escalating, so they may consult with the parent and make a referral to our service. The same if you as a parent have noticed, for instance, that your child has come home with a bag from Sainsbury that you know that they didn't pay for, so you have this evidence that they have committed shoplifting. You may want to refer the child to our service to prevent this behavior from escalating. Then the police may issue a community resolution when your child has been involved in some low-level offending that could include behaviors within the home, fights and assaults to siblings or parents, or outside the home, and it could be again shoplifting or fights or malicious communication. So the seriousness of the offense doesn't warrant that they get charged to court, but yes, they want to mark that incident, and that is via an informal diversion, which is a community resolution. When a child receives a community resolution, we would always offer a program of intervention to prevent that behavior from escalating. And then we have the statutory pathway, and that is where your child gets a formal diversion from court, and that could be a youth caution or a youth conditional caution, or when your child actually is charged and goes to court, and they either receive a community sentence, a custodial sentence, or they are on bail waiting for a trial. We have a statutory duty to support and engage with that child, to monitor and deliver the sentence that the court has given. We can offer multi-agency support. We have seconded workers from mental health, from a nurse, from the NHS, and speech and language therapist, a seconded police officer. We work very closely with substance misuse services, and therefore we can offer multi-agency support to your child. We deliver tailored interventions for each child. Following an assessment, we identify which are the specific needs of that child to prevent reoffending, to manage risk, and to keep that child safe. We also offer support for victims. We work on the basis of child first, offender second. We always want to see our children as children first and then as offenders. We use trauma-informed practice. where we acknowledge that many children would have experienced adverse childhood experiences, and we want to understand how those experiences may actually be underpinning their behaviors and how we can work with that trauma in mind ourselves. And we use the Good Lives model, which is a strengths-based approach. We try to build upon your child's strengths rather than their deficits. Finally, you have here some links about where you can find more help or you can read more about some of these topics. And there's the number for the Wokingham Borough Council, the front door, where you can make referrals for your child or for yourself if you would like some parenting support. Please don't feel like you're alone. There's a number of agencies and practitioners that are ready to help you and to help your child. Thank you very much.